You will never meet an Iranian general. You will never vote on Middle East policy. You will never sit in a room where decisions about oil are made. But if Iran makes one phone call tomorrow morning, one order to one naval commander, the price of everything in your life goes up within 72 hours. Your fuel, your groceries, your electricity bill, the flight you booked for summer, the loan rate on your mortgage, all of it connected to a strip of water, 21 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. A strait most people couldn't find on a map, a choke point that moves 20% of the world's oil every single day. The Strait of Hormuz, and Iran controls one side of it. This is not a hypothetical. This is a loaded weapon that has been pointed at the global economy for 45 years. And understanding exactly how it works and why nobody has disarmed it is one of the most important financial stories alive right now. Most people think of Iran as a regional military problem, a nuclear threat, an ideological conflict between East and West. That framing is convenient. It keeps the real story invisible. The real story is about oil arithmetic, about what happens to a global economy built on the assumption that 20 million barrels of oil will pass through one narrow strait every single day, when that assumption suddenly breaks. Because here is what almost no mainstream coverage explains directly. Iran doesn't need a nuclear weapon to cause a financial catastrophe. It already has one. It has had one since 1979. And the reason the United States keeps an entire naval fleet permanently stationed in the Persian Gulf, at a cost of $50 billion per year, is not ideology. It is insurance. Insurance on that 21-kilometer trigger. To understand the weapon, you first need to understand what the Strait of Hormuz actually is. Not geographically, but economically. Every day, roughly 17 to 21 million barrels of crude oil pass through the strait in tankers. That represents about 20% of total global oil consumption and nearly 30% of all seaborne oil trade. The countries on the other end of that flow are not marginal economies. They are Japan, South Korea, India, China, and large parts of Europe, together representing over 60% of global GDP. There is no realistic alternative route. The Saudi East-West pipeline can carry about 5 million barrels per day, a quarter of the strait's normal volume. Every other option adds weeks and billions of dollars in rerouting costs. This concentration is not an accident of geography. It is the result of 70 years of deliberate infrastructure investment by the same Western oil companies that built the Middle East's extraction systems to funnel product through the most efficient route possible. Efficiency and vulnerability are the same thing when you look at them from opposite directions. The strait became the jugular of the global economy. And Iran was always sitting right next to it. The first time Iran reached for this weapon was 1980. Iraq invaded Iran in September of that year, a war that would last 8 years and kill over 1 million people. As Iraqi forces pushed into Iranian territory and targeted Iranian oil infrastructure, Iran made a calculation. If we cannot export our oil, neither can anyone else. Iranian naval forces began attacking oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, not just Iraqi ones. Any tanker carrying oil that could benefit Iraq's economy was a target. Between 1984 and 1988, over 400 ships were attacked in what became known as the Tanker War. Insurance rates for Gulf shipping increased by 300%. Oil prices spiked. Global shipping companies demanded military escorts. The United States responded by reflagging Kuwaiti tankers under the American flag and sending naval escorts. Operation Earnest Will, the largest naval convoy operation since World War II, deployed to keep the oil moving. The cost to American taxpayers, billions of dollars. Iran had 200,000 soldiers dying on its western border. It had almost no functioning economy. It had no nuclear capability and no advanced air force. And it still forced the world's largest military to reorganize its entire naval posture around one question: will the oil keep moving? That question has never gone away. Here is exactly how the weapon works in 2025, step by step, with the actual numbers. Day 1. Iran's Revolutionary Guard mines the southern approaches to the strait and announces a naval exclusion zone. Insurance underwriters in London, Lloyd's of London sets rates for roughly 90% of global maritime insurance, immediately suspend coverage for Gulf transits. Without insurance, no commercial tanker captain will enter the zone. It is not a legal requirement, it is basic economics. A $200 million vessel with a $150 million cargo does not sail into a minefield without coverage. Day 2. Tanker traffic stops. The 17 to 21 million barrels that were supposed to flow through the strait do not flow. Oil futures markets, which trade on expectation, not reality, immediately price in a prolonged closure. In the 1973 Arab oil embargo, which removed only 7% of global supply, oil prices quadrupled within months. A full Hormuz closure removes 20% of supply. The mathematical consequence is not subtle. Day 3, prices at fuel pumps begin to move. Not because the physical oil has disappeared, storage reserves exist, but because every contract, every hedge, every forward purchase in the global energy market was priced on the assumption that the strait was open. Every one of those assumptions is now wrong simultaneously. The cascade doesn't stop at fuel prices. Every product that requires transportation becomes more expensive immediately. Every plastic product made from petrochemicals becomes more expensive. Every airline adjusts ticket prices within 48 hours. Every central bank starts running inflation scenarios that were not in last quarter's models. 72 hours, one straight, no missiles required. After the tanker war ended in 1988, the world made a silent decision. Not a formal one. No treaty, no vote, no public announcement, but a decision nonetheless. The decision was this: we will build the entire global economy around the assumption that the Strait of Hormuz stays open, and we will pay whatever it costs to maintain that assumption. The United States currently keeps the Fifth Fleet permanently stationed in Bahrain, approximately 20,000 personnel. Multiple aircraft carrier groups on rotation, destroyers, minesweepers, surveillance drones, underwater detection systems. Annual cost, roughly $50 billion every single year, for 35 years without interruption. That is $1.75 trillion spent on one assumption, and the assumption has held, mostly. But the weapon has never been disarmed. It has only been made more expensive to use. Here is the part of the story that mainstream analysis almost never reaches. Iran closing the strait would be catastrophic. But Iran threatening to close the strait is extremely valuable to multiple parties simultaneously. Every time tension rises in the Persian Gulf, 3 things happen automatically. Oil prices increase, defense contractor stocks increase, and Gulf monarchies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, become more dependent on American military protection, which they pay for through arms purchases and dollar-denominated oil contracts. In 2019, after drone attacks on Saudi oil facilities, Lockheed Martin's stock rose 4% in a single day. Raytheon gained $1.2 billion in market capitalization within 48 hours. No war happened. No shots were fired at American assets. The threat alone was enough to move the numbers. Between 2015 and 2020, Saudi Arabia purchased over $64 billion in American weapons. The official justification was the Iranian threat. Without Iran as a credible adversary, that justification disappears. The threat is not just Iran's leverage. It is also the leverage of everyone who profits from the region remaining unstable enough to require constant military spending. This is not a conspiracy, it is an incentive structure. And incentive structures, as history shows repeatedly, are more durable than any political agreement. Iran understands this perfectly. Iranian strategic doctrine, openly discussed in their military publications, does not describe closing the strait as a first move. It describes it as a last resort. The threat of closure is far more valuable than the act. The moment Iran actually mines the strait, the United States has legal and military justification to respond with overwhelming force. The insurance policy gets cashed out. The deterrence collapses, so Iran keeps the weapon loaded and visible. It conducts naval exercises near the strait. It announces new missile systems with the range to hit tankers. it releases maps showing Hormuz in the crosshairs. Each announcement is a reminder without a commitment, a price increase without a trigger pull. In 2019, Iran seized a British-flagged tanker in the strait. In 2021, it attacked an Israeli-linked vessel with drones. In 2023, Iranian-backed forces in Yemen began targeting Red Sea shipping. A different choke point, same logic. The message was consistent. We can reach the arteries. We choose not to sever them today. But today is not forever. What makes this more dangerous in 2025 than in 1985 is not Iran's military capability. It is the changing architecture of the global economy around the strait. China now receives approximately 40% of its oil through Hormuz, India 60%, Japan and South Korea nearly 80%. These are not countries that will simply absorb a closure. They're countries with their own military capabilities, their own economic pressures, and their own relationships with Iran that do not pass through Washington. China has been quietly building alternative payment systems that bypass SWIFT. It has been investing in Iranian infrastructure under long-term trade agreements. It has been developing overland pipeline routes through Central Asia. Not fast enough to eliminate the Hormuz dependency today, but fast enough to change the calculation within a decade. If the day comes when China can move sufficient oil without passing through the strait, the $50 billion annual American insurance policy becomes redundant. The leverage Iran holds over the global economy shifts. The entire system that has kept the weapon loaded but unfired for 45 years begins to change shape. In 72 hours, Iran can erase the assumption that keeps the global economy functioning. It has not done so. Not because it lacks the capability, but because the threat is worth more than the action, to Iran and quietly to others. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographic choke point. It is a mirror. It reflects back the exact shape of every dependency, every incentive, every silent agreement that holds the modern financial world together. And every morning that it stays open is not proof that it is safe. It is proof that today, everyone still has more to gain from the threat than from the explosion. Tomorrow is a different calculation,